So tonight we have Kim Karras from the Foodwell Alliance, who will be discussing local food grants and highlighting USDA grant opportunities and giving us some insight into the application basics. We have Megan Johnson from Spark Market, who is going to discuss crowdfunding and unique methods for utilizing crowdfunding resources, and John Hayes, who will be discussing cash flow and investments and highlighting the process of acquiring investors and how to utilize those investors. So like I said, they're going to give a little bit longer introduction and share a background into what they do.
So hello, my name is Kim Karras, and I am the Grant and Community Capital Manager at Foodwell Alliance. How many of you have heard of Foodwell Alliance? Good. How many feel like they know what we do? Yeah, okay, good. After 2 years, we're still kind of having that response, and I'm still learning actually what we're doing. So it was almost 2 years ago, we were incubated by the Atlanta Community Food Bank, and we have really been sort of growing our organization. We're a startup, like maybe some of you in this room. But what we are as an alliance is a group of like-minded organizations that have one thing in common, and we believe that food builds community, and that a healthy food system really ensures equitable access to locally grown, sustainably grown food. And so when we looked at the movement around local food when we were starting the alliance, there was a bit of fragmentation. There were a lot of amazing, creative, innovative things going on, but not a lot of collaboration. And so we really exist to unite the local food movement. And we do this in 3 ways. We facilitate collaboration, we mobilize capital, and we promote innovation. So I like to talk about the fun stuff, which is mobilizing capital. And we do that in several ways. But tonight, I think the most relevant way that we'll talk about is our local food grant, which is an annual grant. It's up to $25,000, and it's designed each year based on what the findings we glean from the local movement and community itself. So the funding priorities are shaped really by the community and by the local food movement. So a little bit about my background, I think that was part of our intro. I have been in resource development and fundraising for about 10 years prior to starting at Foodwell Alliance. And so I've done a lot of grant writing and digital fundraising for small nonprofits and large global nonprofits as well. Right before joining Foodwell Alliance, I was raising funds for a global organization that was working on farmers in developing countries, and so supporting the work there. So my challenges and my frustrations with the grant writing process is really why I love this job now. Is we were really able to, when I came on, when we first started, shape this grant program so that it is accessible and easy enough to apply for funding. And we're still tweaking that, so this is a good opportunity for me to hear from you when we get into our sessions about what makes sense and what doesn't. We just closed applications for our last local food grant. So far we have invested 2015, 2016, and 2017 local food grants, almost $1 million. And we will launch the next one next summer. So we have some time to prepare, and hopefully we can talk about what y'all, your interests are in, what your background is in, and how, next summer we can get you ready for the local food grant if you're interested. So that's about me. That's who I am. I'm excited to talk about some key questions in the application, and I know just from my experience, especially with the USDA grant, if anyone has ever applied there or wants to, there's some key questions that you'll find in our application as well. Logic model. We'll talk about budgets, and we'll talk about theories of change and things like that they're common questions. So yeah, I'm excited to help and make sure that we are reaching as many folks as possible next year with our next grant. So is that it? Yeah? Okay. Cool. Next. I don't know how to introduce you, but.
It's okay. Let's see if I can get this thing on. Okay. Hey there. My name is Megan Johnson, and I will start, I guess, in the reverse and kind of give you a little bit of information about my background and then get more into what I'll be talking to you guys about today. I am an attorney based here in Georgia, and I used to work for a lot of larger financiers in the more traditional finance industry. I worked in the banking industry. I did a lot of credit transactions. I also worked with a lot of small community banks, especially during the recession back in 08 and 09. Some of y'all may be familiar with this. We lost more banks in Georgia than any other state, small and community-based banks. And I was just getting started with my practice, and I saw my work really change. And I saw a lot of my small banking clients who had been able to extend credit to a lot of small business owners in their communities, been able to work with them on terms, all of a sudden have zero latitude when it came to the trend that they'd had been able to have with their customers in terms of working with them when their small business clients would kind of encounter hard times. So I watched as all my banking clients started having to foreclose on their small business segment, and then watched my clients also have to close up shop and get taken over by the FDIC. So this was in I guess 08, 09, and I started to notice this alternative finance world bubble up in the midst of this horrendous recession. I had a lot of friends that were creative, that were musicians and artists that introduced me to Kickstarter in 09. And I started giving money to my friends' projects and noting how all of a sudden there was this brand new source of capital for folks who inexplicably were able to raise money, despite the fact that the banking industry and a lot of other traditional sources of capital were just getting hit real hard. So I got really into crowdfunding. And when folks talk about crowdfunding, I feel like now it's such a nebulous word that means so many things. It can refer to pure donation-based crowdfunding, where folks just give you money, they don't expect anything back. It's just more of sort of the charitable feel-good sort of motivation that backers have. There's rewards-based crowdfunding, which most folks are familiar with, the kind of Kickstarter and Indiegogo model, where the backers will give you money and you'll get they'll get a hat or a T-shirt or some sort of perquisite in exchange for the money. What I got mostly interested in, because I was a lawyer who'd worked in traditional finance, was securities-based financing or crowdfunding, where backers, instead of just getting a hat or T-shirt back in exchange for donating to a for-profit project, would actually get a stake in the business. They could get a return from their equity investment, or just make some money on a loan, make a little bit of interest back on the loan. So I started getting interested in that in 2010, 2011. And I'm not a securities lawyer. John Hayes, who's also going to talk to you guys a lot about investing and some of the same stuff that I'll be talking about, he is a securities lawyer, a lot smarter than me in a lot of different ways, but a lot more experience. But I think there was still this kind of fundamental issue that no securities lawyer could overcome when it came to figuring out how to make securities crowdfunding work for small businesses, and it was the fact that a small business, just in general, was not allowed to generally advertise the fact that they were looking for investors. So all you could do until 2012, until very recently, if you were a small business, was just use rewards-based crowdfunding. That changed in 2012 in certain states, and it also changed at the national level, and I got really excited about that. So a couple of years ago, a buddy of mine, we formed Spark Market, which is a company that helps small businesses leverage these new laws that allows you to generally advertise that you're looking for investors. Today, Spark Market operates a little bit differently from Kickstarter or from a traditional platform. We let you launch a deal from a website, from a newsletter. You just, our process will generate a little link that you can share with your network through social media. And then you can advertise that you're looking for investors or for lenders if you just want a traditional loan. It can be collateralized or not. But you can launch it from anywhere you want, and then our process will usher investors or lenders through the terms of your deal, and then we close it and issue you your financing. So there's a lot of rules around how that can work and how it's still illegal that I'll talk about a little bit in our session. But in general, I think one thing to remember when we're, I guess, meeting and have time to kind of get into more depth, the type of financing I'm talking about, I mean, crowdfunding can fit so many different financial amounts. Y'all know, I'm sure, I'm very familiar with kind of the Kickstarter rewards-based model that can support small amounts of money. The type of financing I'm talking about will fit more in the 50,000 on up to even $1 million in certain cases. So it's that type of financing that we'll be discussing in more depth during our breakout sessions. So I'm excited to meet you all, and look forward to getting to know what each of you guys kind of individually do in greater detail.
As Megan said, I started my career as a securities lawyer for a very large firm here in Atlanta. And I was fortunate. My clients range from Goldkist, which at the time was the largest ag co-op in the Southeast, who went public as a $2 billion company. They had been exempt from registering their securities because of the way they operate as a co-op. They changed their business model a little bit and had to go register the securities. In fact, the common comment in the law firm is they thought they were exempt from everything, including fishing licenses. But anyway, we had to register their securities. To the other end of the spectrum, because I'm a Georgia Tech graduate, we did a lot of work with small startup tech companies. About 35 years ago, a company that I'd actually started with some other Georgia Tech graduates while I was in law school got sold, and I got a check that was about 10 times my annual salary at the law firm. And I said, this entrepreneurial thing makes a whole lot of sense. I like it a lot, and particularly you don't have to keep track of your time that you're billing clients. And so I started down a path of being an entrepreneur, and over the past 35 years have started 6 companies, sold 4 of them to larger companies. 2 of them are still out there unsold, one of which I'm running today with my partner Laura Hodson, called Now Account, that I'll tell you a little bit about. Landon, can I wander? I can't wander. Okay. There's in our breakout session, that's okay, in our breakout session, what looks like a squashed bug up on the wall to you from back there is actually a diagram, a flow chart, and it's talking about all the sources of capital for a business. And what we're going to talk about a little bit is the cost of that. Every source of capital has a cost, whether it's taking cash that comes in that might be counterfeit, or if you're an employer, might shrink, as they call it in retail, where your cash walks out the door in an employee's pocket, all the way to equity. I actually have a book coming out at the end of this month called Capital Rules, Capital Scales. And my family knows I love puns, and that's actually a pun, because what the book does is looks at the cost, attempts to measure the cost of all these different forms of capital. The scale and the rule are, of course, the same thing, but if you talk about measuring the cost of capital, because capital costs you not just dollars in interest or dividends to investors, but it costs you in time. And many entrepreneurs think their time has no value. That is absolutely not true. It's the most valuable thing you have. It costs you in control. As Megan will tell you, when you give up control to an investor, you might be giving up the overall control of your company ultimately. You give up control to a bank when you sign a loan that has a set of covenants in it that you have to meet. So all of these different forms of capital have a cost, and that's what we're going to talk a little bit about tonight in the breakout session, and in particular the left-hand side of that, which is revenue. And actually in the book I divide that into 2 categories, revenue and grants, which you're going to hear addressed. Kim's going to talk to you about one grant program they have, which is terrific. And the reason I break out revenue from grants in the book is that there are actually 4 times as many businesses in the U.S. each year that get grants as get venture capital. But you never hear in the news about grants. What you hear about is venture capital and how that's such a great thing to go after. So that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the sources of capital from a pretty high level and a little bit about the cost of it.